So what does everyone think about companies that depend on domestic demand, like CSR?
Well, this is 2 weeks ago we were talking about the one-cylinder economy over the budget, weren't we? This is the other cylinder, and unfortunately the cylinder that was working has just popped a comrod as well. This is the industrial sector all over, and the problem for an investor in the industrials is that it's the best performing sector. It's even better than banks over the last year, but within it there are bombs going off, and you don't know when you're going to tread on one of them. And I think there are a number of profit warnings that we'll see.
There was in fact a bomb went off this week. Toll Holdings. We've got a graph of their share price, which is pretty amazing. Shares down 20% as a result of a profit warning, and it's being squeezed by big customers, supermarkets, and it also took a nasty hit on a Japanese logistics business that it took over in 2009 as part of its push to build a global freight forwarding business. So it's all going pear-shaped there. Yeah. What do you think?
I think one of the issues is that our companies still seem to wait for demand to improve instead of recreating themselves. If you look at the American companies, which have had weak demand for the better part of 2 or 3 years, they have not just waited for government or policy or something to give them a better outcome. So I'm heartened that he's saying he's prepared to invest back in his business and look for efficiencies and new product ranges in his business, because at the end that's what's making the American stock market a much better longer-term performer than ours.
And you don't think there's enough of that going on?
I think most of our domestic companies are sitting there waiting for the economy to grow rather than what they do to themselves as a business.
With Toll, it's interesting the theme of Australian companies losing money offshore. Billabong in the US and IAG in Britain, Petrohawk with BHP, and Toll's taken a $160 million write-down on its Japanese business. And I hope they don't do a new farm and exclude that from the profit bonus calculation by going the old underlying earnings things. You see quite a few companies take a write-down and then don't actually let the executives really hurt in the pay packets with the way they account for it. So we're watching that one.
But it just reinforces the fact that our domestic companies aren't as efficient as what they should be on a global basis. They enjoy super profits here, that what they do in good times, then they think they can take that globally and actually don't have a competitive advantage.
And hubris, they think they overconfident and bang.
And we're going to see more of these profit warnings running into June because people are
confession season.
Confession season. We've had 13 in the last month, and it's not even confession season, and that's in the ASX 200.
I'll call that confession season, 13 in the last month.
Probably
I think so. There's going to be more. I mean, what they're trying to do, obviously, is massage expectations so that they don't get hit too much, and then they come out with a profit result. Everyone writes up that they met in line with expectations, which they've just changed 2 weeks ago.
Don't get hit too much. Toll was down 15% in one day and 8% the next day.
And you don't see that much with all the class actions these days on continuous disclosure. You don't see that. I mean, the Centro 200 million was a belated profit warning situation. So surprising to see a company have such shock news that it causes a 20% slump in 1 week.
And the question for everybody is, where do you go from here? And if you look at the sectors, there are still sectors that are actually going up, which is Telstra, utilities, healthcare, what was the other one? Consumer staples, Woolworths and Wesfarmers.
Yeah.
There was also an ASX item in its electronic newsletter this week that got a bit of interest around the traps, arguing for a change in the capital placement and raising rules, which allow small cap companies such as junior miners and explorers to increase their capital raising limits from what is currently 15% to 25%. So what do you think of that, Mr. Shareholder Advocate?
Well, it's a shocker. I mean, this is the commercial arm of the ASX looking for new listings, competing with Canada. And, what about the property rights of shareholders? I mean, you should raise pro rata. It's a property right. Placements already at 15%. This idea of taking it to 25%.
Because people at home. In other words, you can do these placements without offering them to existing shareholders.
That's right. You can just do 15%.
And you can do them at a discount.
And now they're trying to say they want to make it 25% for all companies worth up to 300 million. That's way too high, and it really is up to ASIC here to intervene and the federal government to stop the ASX commercial motivations from lowering standards and protections for small shareholders and all shareholders.
The other side is the problem that you're not addressing, which is that our companies struggle to get enough capital. The sources of capital in the Australian market are quite thin. There's no high yield market, there's no venture capital of any description. So a lot of these companies' only source of capital is to find somebody who's prepared to take a big shareholding of some kind. And the other thing is, I think it's all very well to say small shareholders should be protected. People should know what they're investing in and understand that those companies may need capital. If they're investing without recognising that particularly mining projects are going to have to need a large amount of capital at some point.
For startups or life sciences or biotechs under 100 million, maybe, but not for all companies up to 300 million. I mean, the Brits
why are you discriminating between 100 300? What's the problem?
Because if you're a cash burn company with a startup, you might need some more flexibility. But the Brits only allow 5% placements. They have the best standards in the world. Why are we going to...
But they're just flying a kite, weren't they?
Well, they're going to come up with something shortly, and they're pushing on. Even though there's been a massive backlash with 170 submissions already. We all got deluded during the GFC when they raised 100 billion. A lot of the placements to the big end of town and all the insiders. So.